All right, welcome.
Hey.
Welcome to episode 15 of the SaaS Coach Show. Tony
15.
Zias, 15, number 15.
Number 15. And I'm Andy Halco, CEO of Incivia.
Yep.
And we've been doing our SaaS Coach show now for over 14 weeks. Last week,
We did it. We were here. We showed up.
We did this.
We delivered. We went through this
But
presentation.
it didn't go out to you folks, so we have to do it all over again. And all I can tell you was last week, the secrets of the universe, we pretty much literally just taught the audience everything. It was unbelievable. It was probably the best show that's ever been done in the history of man.
Should have been there.
It just didn't stream, so I don't, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So we're here. We've done 14 episodes now. SaaS Coach. We've talked about how your website can increase conversions and really get significantly more effective. So if you're interested in how to use 10 principles to increase SaaS website conversion, it's worth it to go back and check out all those episodes and download that white paper. And then I think coming up in a couple weeks, we're starting a whole new series.
Yeah.
And what's that going to be on?
So the topic is spin out. So we're going to be talking about how you can take
Retention.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of our other one.
You are. That's all right. We're going to be talking about
Keeping
retention
users.
for software as a service.
There we go.
And so it's really about, we talked about conversion. How do you get leads and opportunities into the funnel, and they're, doing demos and trials and all of that stuff. And it's important to get that conversion, because if you don't have conversion, nothing else matters to me. What's the point of marketing and advertising if you can't get conversion? But then what we talk about with software is how important retention is.
Absolutely.
That if you have too many people that are signing up and leaving, that is something that is, it's all that wasted effort, all that effort in marketing and conversion, and the cost of a lost customer is really high. And so we really want to talk through in this series a number of tactics and strategies that increase retention for software as a service.
And that's kind of it's more, the conversion is more glamorous, right? Like you're excited about, getting the new customers coming on board, but retention, and if you can't keep them, that's trouble. And if you get good at it, it's incredibly powerful. It's a
growth strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, and when you do the math and you look at retention and the amount of people that leave, if you're getting over 15% of users are turning over, are churning, that can really hurt your long term. That line looks flat instead of going up. And so it's really something to look at how you improve it. And again, like with our whole conversion series, I think we've got a number of tactics that are kind of like, okay, that's a no-brainer that we can go in and implement and make some improvements. So, but today we're doing kind of an in-between episode, just throwing out a random topic. And last week we decided to do this topic mainly because we had just gotten out of a session with a client. We were helping them determine what their product roadmap is, really looking at the technology and the approach of how they're going to build their SaaS product. And so we thought it would be interesting to take kind of just a little piece of our system, our workshop, our exercise, and just kind of show a little bit of our approach, just as people are going through their own process of looking at roadmap, looking at, planning out a software, that maybe some of these things can help spark conversations.
Yeah. So we won't share the secrets of the universe this week.
No, I mean, it's something where you really you can only give it away once.
I get it. I understand.
42, and that was pretty much it. We just gave away 42, and that's, I don't know if you know that reference.
I do.
Okay, good.
So,
if anybody else does.
This one is, so as Andy said, this is basically a sampling of a workshop. So you're going to get the same concepts, And these points, and you will go through in just a second, super important for anyone that's building out a product. And some of these areas are areas of consideration that you're more interested in. Some are others that you're not as thinking of the legal side of things as you are, others, but really important. And so I think it's a comprehensive look at some of the things that you have to be considering for growth purposes, for legal reasons, for a whole bunch of different, customer experience, etc. So
when we do this with clients, what came prior to this is that we went through the features exercise. We really looked at all the different features that they were looking at, how those ranked in the value to the target audience. And then we talked about the value of the stickiness, the difficulty of creation of that feature, and actually use that as a way to determine some level of priority to the features that we were doing. And then next we're doing this, which is really customer impact ranking. So we're looking at some different factors that we see that we think our customers care about, and trying to understand what level do we need to incorporate or understand that into our software. And then the next stage that we're not getting into, we really look at business impact. So what are important factors to the company? And maybe we can hint at a couple of those, but I think we can start and go through this. So the whole approach is really starting off and looking at your target customer, and really just going through these different factors so that you can get a sense. And for me, the way that I look at it, we have people rank these. So we'll get a leadership team in the room, and we'll go through each of these and we'll say, let's rank them for 1 to 10. But the reality is that it's truly there to start conversations and discuss these pieces. Because a lot of times when people are developing a software, one, they're not always really diving into the customer mindset. And then two, depending on your level of sophistication, there may be topics that you don't even know you need to discuss. And we've found that with a number of clients, because we tend to work with companies that they've got an expertise in a certain subject matter, but maybe not the expertise in creating a product. And so a lot of these topics can be foreign to them. And this really helps spark that discussion, and again, get back into the customer mindset, because that's what we're all about here, right? Is, if we understand the customer and we're delivering value and we're meeting their expectations, then that's where we start seeing success and traction.
Absolutely.
Cool. So let's talk about some of these things. And again, we use a ranking, but this is really used to spark conversation. So the first two are security and privacy. So we look at security and privacy as two different things. Security is, how hard is it to hack into a system? How secure is the information? We live in a world where we're seeing huge brands get information stolen from their systems, and then it's sold on the dark web and all these crazy things. And so different industries have different levels. And so we tend to look at it that, if you're in banking or healthcare, there's certain compliance and requirements, versus if you're in gaming or entertainment, there's a different level of requirement. And again, it's not that any of our clients want to have a 0 or a 2 on security, but it's good to kind of walk through the conversation of, for my target audience, how important is it that we've got a very solid, secure solution? Do we need to be looking at PCI compliant things that require us to change our passwords on a regular basis of all users? Do we need to have information encrypted? What are the different solutions that we need? And again, you might be at a 10 if you're in banking and healthcare, but maybe you're only at a 5 if you're in the gaming and entertainment. I do think we're in a world now today where you can't be at a 1.
I was just going to say, It matters to everybody, no matter what it is. But again, the type of application, the industry, the use, what records are in there.
And it's just going to make you think about it differently. I mean, if you're building a product for banking, you may really need to bring in a number of third-party consultants looking at the security, looking at the testing of the infrastructure, really going through and providing third-party analysis to make sure that you can prove the level of security, versus, again, if you're in an industry where it's more loose and there's just, we care about hacking, but it's not something that our customers are going to come in and demand, that this is CIA level, compliance.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and then the reverse of that is privacy, which is very connected, but privacy is more who can see what information. And so for us, again, if you look at healthcare, you've got HIPAA. Who has access to what information? With patient information, you really have to be careful about who can see it.
Yeah.
But again, if we're in more of a B2B environment, or we're in some sort of entertainment gaming, if the wrong person gets access, it's not something that's going to break our business.
So a little bit different, I guess you're saying, so it's not someone's hacking, it's just someone who works on an internal team. Can they see the records?
And that's a big piece of it, is roles.
Yeah.
Understanding roles and view capabilities. Often when we're building systems, we're looking at, can the owner of the company see all of their clients' information or not? Can the owner of the account see all the information in there? Who can see what information within the system? I just saw an article about Slack, where a CEO had to resign because he was looking at Slack conversations of his employees and finding out that they had issues, and I think he fired them. And so there you're talking about that privacy, who can see what. Yeah. And so in different industries, or at least with your customer base, you have to think about what is their expectation. Who can see what information, to what level, even to the database level. Do they have access to export information? And so even if you build out your site and maybe the owner of the account can't see personal information of people, but then they go hit an export button and all that information is there, you really have to think through, well, how much do we care about privacy? How much does it matter to our target audience? And that needs to be considered when we're kind of creating our plan and roadmap for our software to be developed.
For sure.
The next one, ADA compliance. So I don't know how many people are familiar, but this is the American Disabilities Act, and it's really about, is your site accessible for those that have disabilities? And so we look at things like blind users, or even to colorblind, or other people that might have some other attribute that makes it hard for them to browse a normal site. And so as an example, we talked about this in our meeting, is that if you're blind, the only way that you can browse a site is through your keyboard, hitting tab on things, and then using your cursor over top of stuff. And so what happens if I'm blind, if I put my mouse over the logo, it needs to read me the name of the company or maybe the page that I'm on. And then when I move my mouse over an image, it needs to describe that image to me. And then if I'm blind and I'm using tabs, we always talk about it, there's something called tab order. So the logo's the first tab order, and then it should move to navigation. When you get to forms, it should move through each field of the form.
So it's like a predictable
way for them to quickly move and use a tab through to find stuff. And if you're blind, one of the things it does is as you tab, it will use that information to read it to you. So I'll tab to the first navigation item and it'll read the text to me. Now the issue that comes is that if a developer doesn't pay attention to this, what if they go to a form and it goes in the first field, they hit tab and it goes down to the submit button, but it didn't finish any of the other fields. Now that can happen, and that's a bad experience and makes it really hard for someone to use the site. We just saw that there was a big lawsuit and to-do about Domino's because someone couldn't order pizza online. So I do think that this is a conversation starter, is that for your users, again, if you're in government or maybe healthcare, you really have to think about users that might not have the capability to use a site in kind of just a regular fashion.
I think a lot of people think of this and they think, oh, that's for, some government site or whatnot. But when the more I'm hearing about this, first of all, I think it's pretty fascinating to have to think about it from that perspective of a blind user going through and having that predictable experience that they can follow. But it's similar to businesses having to, physical presence. You got to have a ramp.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody, if someone is in a wheelchair, they need to be able to get in. Right. So it's not, if anyone can access a website, everyone's using the web. So got to be compliant. So I think it's something that it's not just really for specialty.
Yeah.
Everyone should have that in this checklist. Got to think about it. How are you going to address it? Conversation that you wouldn't have had a few years back.
Right. Well, I think if you look at consumer products like Domino's, it should be every person's right to be able to order a pizza. It'll be interesting to see over the next few years how this really plays out.
Yeah.
Obviously the number of lawsuits and the issues are going to play into it. But I would say when we talk to clients, ADA compliance, both on a website perspective, from like marketing, is not thought of, and then often in the software application itself, it is rarely thought of as well. And so this is one of those things that, again, it's just good. Is it something that's an 8 for your audience that they're really going to care about because of the types of users that you have, or is it a 3? And then you can have some discussions around, cost versus and risk versus, all of those other things to decide whether you really need to incorporate it into your product.
Yeah.
Backup and data recovery. So, this is making sure that there's information can be gotten to in case there's an emergency or something else happens. Imagine if you've got a data center with all your clients' information and there's a fire or an asteroid hits it. What is the capability that, one, you're going to make sure that you still have that data? So was it backed up on a third-party location? And then 2, how quickly can you get it back up? Is it mission critical that it's like, again, I go to healthcare, patient records that, someone's going in the surgery, your data center just got bombed, they're going to look for that patient record that they need for that surgery. And, is it back up in 10 minutes or is it back up in 48 hours? Yeah. And that can make a life or death difference. So we really look at backup and data recovery, again, for your target audience, your customer. How much do they care to make sure that the information is super secure or super backed up? Potentially multiple locations. There's companies that have, backup servers in a third location, and then they save a physical copy somewhere else, so that they can really make sure that no data can ever be lost. If you're running a gaming company, I don't know if someone's scores need to be at the level that you've got 3 layers of backup. And then the data recovery piece of how quickly can we get that data back into the system if something happens. Again, is it 5 minutes because it's so critical, or is it 2 weeks and no one's going to freak out? So again, just a conversation to think about for your target audience.
Yeah, interesting.
The next 3 are that I think fit together are kind of support, onboarding, and services. So again, thinking about your target audience, support. That's, I've got an issue, something's not going right, or I don't understand something. Can I pick up the phone? Can I send an email and get help with my issue? There's obviously different levels that in some industries, you can go on a website and never find support information, or it's like some form that you fill out and 3 weeks later you get an answer. Versus other ones where it's so critical that if you pick up the phone, you really need like a high-level person to help walk you through that issue that moment.
Yeah.
And so again, it's looking at that customer experience of what is their expectation of support, how quickly do they want it, what level of people are they talking to, what different channels do they expect it from, how often do we think that target audience is going to need it. And so that's, again, something that we really want to think through.
That's an area that you could actually possibly use that to differentiate yourself from your competition,
100%.
because there are certain type of applications and sites where you know that you're never going to get someone from Google or
Yeah.
from Facebook if you're trying to use, their site. But if you're creating, competition in that place, in that marketplace, and you offer something that has, there is a need, that's something people have complained about and said, well, I can't get the support that I need. Now you offer live chat or something like that, right?
You see that in the B2B space a lot. Like if you're doing software to businesses, there are definitely ones where the support level is low, but you can create a differentiator by having really great support.
And you hear about that.
Yeah,
people talk
definitely.
about that. Say, well, I went with X because Y. They took forever to get back to me. So. Yeah.
And then that kind of ties into the onboarding and I'll call it training is, different softwares have different needs. Again, there are very turnkey software platforms that you install and someone can start going and they can just use it that day. A lot of things like Adobe, you even think of Photoshop. Yeah. I dive in and I can kind of start using it. But then on the opposite side, we've got systems like ERPs, which are true accounting, inventory management, shipping management, order management, all this stuff that's included. And when you're moving into that software, it takes 6 months of training the team, pulling in data, probably making sure that the data is there correctly, that it integrates with other systems. So there's a whole different, level of onboarding and training that needs to happen. And again, this is one that we like to measure and talk through, especially from a customer perspective. We actually talk about it on the business side too, and we're dealing with this with a customer or with one of our clients, is that their customer wants a, let's call it 7 on the onboarding. They want some help, they're going to need help, they want training and all that, but our client, wants to be a little bit more hands-off. And so what you start doing is you have to think through the development of the software to say, okay, I've got to embed onboarding experiences into the product and training into the product so I can make it more hands-off. Yeah. And so that's, again, one of those things that we're looking at it from the customer perspective, and then in the next stage we're going to look at it from a business perspective, and that helps us determine some of the features and the approach that we take with building the product. And then the next one, services, that again fits in that little bucket for me of support, onboarding, and services, is are we offering complementary services or related services to our product? Again, in that ERP space, you may have a consultant that comes in and helps you look at operational efficiency. And that's a differentiator in the marketplace is, you can either just provide an ERP or you can provide an ERP with a set of consultants that can help solve business problems. And in other industries it's very similar, where we're determining, are there related services with the product, or is this purely just a software play and we don't talk to you after you install it or set it up.
Yeah, thinking of adding on services could be potential opportunity to open up a new profit center, as you said.
Yeah.
That those consultants that come in, it's software plus service, could trigger some great ideas if you're talking with your leadership team.
Yeah, and we actually had that conversation with a client recently. Is they're looking at growing revenue, and there was an option on the table of taking their existing software and spinning it out into a kind of a different version for a different industry. And so that takes a certain amount of programming and effort, potentially a whole new brand and marketing. There's a lot of different things that you need to think through. The other side that we looked at is how can we stack more offerings onto their existing client base. So they're already using relationships that they have, but maybe we're adding services or adding support packages or maybe adding some additional feature sets that are complementary to it, or integration services. And so those are two very different strategic approaches. Am I staying within kind of my lane and vertical and building up and building vertical on my stack, or am I building horizontal and trying to go across more industries? So again, services can be part of that conversation, not only when you're first thinking about building a software, but later as a discussion of, how do you potentially scale or get more revenue out of your current audience. Next is language. This is pretty straightforward, but it's good to do a quick measurement in the room. Do we need to offer other languages? Obviously software products, we put them out there, and if it's a turnkey product, I mean, there's no reason, and we've seen this with clients, that someone from Germany or somewhere else comes in and they want to utilize it. Well, if your software isn't built up front for other languages, you may run into some real big challenges. We just dealt with that with currency. Software was built with U.S. currency, but then as they got into some other countries, the translation was a little bit easier, but actually all the calculations ended up needing a lot of customization. And so again, it's good to have this conversation up front to say, what is the long-term roadmap? Because we as software developers, or whoever you are using to develop the software, should be thinking about whether languages and currencies should be set up from the beginning, even if they're not completely filled out. Next, price. Obviously, we like to just get a sense of how price sensitive is the target customer. Is this something where they expect a large price, and even if there's add-ons or swings in price, that this is something that they're tolerant of, or are they very price conscious and it's got to be low cost and there can never be upgrades. I think in Netflix is they keep increasing the cost. At what point is the customer so price sensitive that that's going to be a challenge? And that changes with market.
And this is all, and again, just a reminder, we're going through this all from that customer perspective. So
all from customer.
We might have our ideas of what we should sell our software for, but what will the market bear? What do we think that those customers, those potential customers would, feel comfortable with? So that might even trigger some market research, doing some surveys and things like that to get a sense.
And I think the pricing conversation is much bigger. Trust me, there is a lot more to it. But this part of the exercise, again, like you said, is just, can we get a sense from the customer of kind of price sensitivity or level? Then we're going to talk about it internally associated to our costs. With one of our clients, we're doing a forecasting right now where we're looking at, what's the expense of build and run and all these aspects of their product. And then obviously, what's the ability to bring on new customers, and then you have to play with that price for the software to determine whether you're going to make profit or not. And so, I mean, there's what's the price sensitivity of the customer, what drives profit for us, combined with what's in the competitive marketplace. So pricing is a whole nother conversation. But again, this just gives us some sort of, quick discussion point based off of our target audience. And then the last two will go integration. So how important is it to integrate to other softwares? Again, we get into kind of medical or banking or healthcare, and different softwares where maybe they need to integrate with a third party. ERPs do that all the time. They might need to integrate with a CRM or something like that. And this can be even a unique value proposition. We have one client where they've got hundreds of different integrations where other softwares can bring data in, or they can send it to other software platforms, and that's a unique selling point compared to their competitors. And that's a good conversation to think about in the beginning, is what is going to be the long-term requirement for our customers to integrate with other platforms, or even let them build their own custom integrations.
And it's such a relevant thing to talk about, because as people are, I guess in whatever space you're in with your software, you have to think about kind of what does that look like competitively. It used to be people were launching all these different, software tools, applications, and so the stack that you're using are all these disconnects. Now it's becoming more important that things work together. It's like, I don't want to, now there's something that, all the data resides separate, and right? So the more
your software becomes more valuable. We look at our own project management tool. it manages projects and tasks and all these things very well, but it actually doesn't do time tracking and reporting very well. But there's another product that does it really well, and they've got an integration where all of a sudden, if you have both products, they're working in tandem together. And so, for us as a product, it means maybe we don't have to develop every single feature out there. We can take our lane and build it really well and make sure it works and the experience is great, and then have integration so that other people that are making something great can integrate, and then that way, we're all creating a great value rather than, a wide set of features that kind of work mediocre.
Or just a silo that's kind of sitting in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I like that, the way you described it. It's almost like, can your application be part of a greater ecosystem that works well there? So,
the biggest for me in that is, I think that a lot of times people that build software, they want to add features. Like, they love it, like hanging ornaments on a Christmas tree. How many can we get on here? And that ends up diluting it, because it dilutes the value. It probably makes the software more complex. It moves away from the idea of how do you create a simple, great experience. And the alternative approach is do a couple things really well, and then find other partners that do, related things well, and bring that together to have a more powerful offering. So integration is a good part to have a discussion around. And then finally, innovation. We like to measure how much the target audience is really looking for change and improvement in your product. We've got a couple software products where we see updates every couple days to the UI, to the feature set, and our team, being who they are, look forward to that stuff and are excited that this new feature came out and it can help me work better. But then there are other industries and potential customers that they're just not going to be as hungry for it. Either they're not as concerned with new features coming in, or even based off of their demographics, maybe they're a little nervous every time something changes. And again, this is just something that I don't think a lot of people think about, but it is good to measure from your customer perspective what is either their expectation or the impact of regular innovation in your product and release of new features to that target audience.
I think something interesting came up in the workshop that we did last week. It was the tracking of that, of all the versioning and updates, and each change that's made and the user that made it and all that type. And those are things to early on consider. And how important is that for your customers? How important is that internally? So
and that's kind of its own little piece, is how important is versioning. It kind of covers a couple of these, and we did talk about it, but I know in some of our softwares I can make a bunch of changes and then hit the undo button, or go in and see that Joe made this specific change a week and a half ago, and I can undo it, or I can at least know that he did it and talk to him about it. Versus, are you just going in and building a software where when you go in and make an update, it replaces it, I have no idea that you did it, and it's kind of a flat system. There are certain types of customers that if they have that flat system, whether it's for compliance reasons or just approval process, whatever it might be, you really need that versioning mindset in there. So there's definitely, and I think that brings up a point. We have this limited list, but there are a lot of subjects that need talked through. And even in our engagements, we go through this list, but then we add on different ones to try and understand what the needs of the customer are.
And it's eye-opening, again, because there's a lot of different perspectives here that, the different people in the room, they're going to have their areas. Maybe the top 3 are really important to the, this guy. But that lady over there, it's the ones kind of in the middle. It's onboarding services, So it's interesting to go through this, but it's important to have that realization early on. We need to be looking at this in a holistic manner, considering all these things from that customer perspective, and then we move on also from the internal perspective.
And that's why I like our approach. We tend to do these structured workshops, and for me, it's great if you get a leadership team in the room, and it's kind of a blank sheet of paper, and it's like, all right, guys, we're gonna build a product. Let's start discussing what's important. You don't have any list or anything. one, are you missing things? Two, how is the conversation structured? How do you make sure that you're evaluating it correctly? And so, even if people are having conversations like this, if you're not structuring it and building it with, this is what we need to talk to, this is how we measure and discuss it, and then here's how we use that information as an outcome to influence what we're doing. It's really hard to build a software and get traction and growth if it's just kind of, let's sit in a room and have a dialogue. I see that all the time. That's what's missing in a lot of things, is people want to have meetings and they want to sit in a room and talk things through. But what you really need in a good meeting is a defined outcome that you're looking for and a structure to the conversation that helps you answer all of those questions. And so that's why, again, it's great to sit in a room, but you really need a structure to a conversation.
Yep. So, I would say take this and run with it.
Yeah.
This is a way
it's
to
a little
kind of look
hint
at this,
into
just
our
a
process.
little sampling of kind of what we do in our workshops.
Yeah, I think this is part of when you're helping someone look at developing a product and a product roadmap. This is one of those important pieces in that step of developing that. And if you don't do it right, again, I think you could be developing the wrong product where it's not valuable to the target audience. You could be spending a ton of time building out something that's huge, and then when you release it, it's not right. Yeah. Talking through these conversations can save you time and money and get traction and growth a lot faster. And that's what's really important, because we're all limited in our time, money, and other resources. So, yeah, hopefully this was valuable for the audience. Again, we've got a new series coming up where we're going to be taking a whole slew of episodes and talking about tactics to increase retention in a software so you can reduce churn. And that is, again, something super valuable for any software business. So we'll be bringing it after the holidays.
Yeah, for sure. And just a reminder that if you are interested in the conversion-focused stuff, all of those past episodes, the downloads and whatnot are all available at SaaS.coach. So go check it out. Otherwise, we will see you again next time. Next week, we'll be here. We hope that we're broadcasting now, first of all.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And hopefully we'll be back again next week.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And if you've got questions, definitely feel free to fill out the contact form on our site. We're always happy to help, that's for sure.
For sure.
Awesome. See you, everybody.
Take care.